You can learn so much about writing from looking at your favorite shows and analyzing what makes them great. In the spirit of that, we're going to be looking at Hama from Avatar: The Last Airbender. In this video, I'll go over who she is, what makes her great, and sort of teach you how I would make a character sheet for her so that you can apply these same principles to your writing. We meet Hama in season 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which might technically be season 4, right? Technically, it went water, season 1 of Earth, season 2 of Earth, and then fire. But for some reason, they like to put it down as just water, earth, and then fire for their books. But regardless, we meet her in the fire season. The group is telling ghost stories around a fire at night, right? We're set up with a much more sinister thriller slash horror tone for this episode. They're all telling these ghost stories, and then Katara says she's got one that's based on real life, and she starts telling the story about somebody getting lost in a big storm and then freezing somebody who was actually a person from their village, a person named Nini, and it's somebody that their mom actually knew in real life. It does turn into a ghost story at the end, and it is scary, right? But it's told through the lens of like folklore. This is true. This is a real ghost story. It ends when Toph stops it and says she thinks she hears people screaming underground. She's blind, but she sees and senses things through vibrations in the ground using her earthbending, right? So she thinks she hears people screaming, and then everybody's worried at first, and then they think, oh no, you're just saying that because it's horror story time. Then Hama comes in, right? She approaches the group at their fire at night, says, like, introduces herself, accidentally scares them, and says, hey, look, I run an inn here, and people have been disappearing at night. You don't want to be left out. Just come over to my place. So the group ends up going to her inn. They spend the night there. They can feel something is off with her, right? And, one thing leads to another. They start sort of snooping around when they don't think that she's going to catch them. And because they're suspicious, right? They're like, something's not right with this old lady. She catches them, and she ends up revealing to them, hey, I'm actually from the Southern Water Tribe, right? That's the same tribe that Sokka and Katara, two of the main characters, are from. She would have heard that story being told. That's why she brought them in, and that's why she's, sort of letting them in on that secret that she's kept for decades. She lets them know that, she's a waterbender from the Southern Water Tribe, and that she was captured by the Fire Nation in the raids that would have taken place in the past. Now, these raids were so effective that Katara was the only person in the Southern Tribe that could actually bend anymore. So this is huge for Katara. She thought she was the only one left. She thought all these traditions were dead or were going to die with her. And now there is, somebody who is actually part of all of what they lost. And as she's sort of revealing this to them and confiding in them about who she is, she does let them know that she spent a bunch of time in a Fire Nation prison just for the sole crime of being a waterbender in the Southern Tribe. And she tells them it was terrible, but she was able to escape. She doesn't tell them how, and says, look, this is a very, very painful memory. I don't want to relive it right now. So, Aang, Sokka, and Toph, they kind of go off and do their own thing. But throughout this episode, Hama teaches Katara the ways of waterbending, right? Because she is a waterbending master from the southern tribe. And she teaches all of these techniques that people haven't used before, things that people didn't really think were possible. It's pretty explicitly stated that waterbending requires a source of water. And we're never shown a scenario where it's done without a source, right? It's very clear. You need a body of water, or like at least some kind of puddle. Then you can bend your water. You can make it do whatever you want. You can attack with it, blah, blah, blah. Hama shows Katara, hey, the air has moisture in it. You can condense the moisture in the air, turn it into water. You can get water without any sort of source, and you can attack with it or defend, heal, whatever you need to do. In that same vein, she shows, look, you can even pull this water out of the plants. She pulls it out of the grass. She pulls it out of fire lilies, like these flowers, and she pulls it out of trees. And when she does that, it rips all the moisture out. It kills those things instantly. They shatter. They're dead. It's like they were freeze-dried, right? And Katara, she doesn't like that it's killing stuff and that, all these fire lilies are destroyed by this technique. But Hama tells her, look, we're deep in enemy territory. We got to do what we got to do to survive. It's not a huge deal, right? We're just doing our best here. Next, she offers to teach Katara something that can only be done under the full moon. Within the universe of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the full moon is what strengthens waterbenders. It gives them a big boost to their power that they don't otherwise have, right? Katara's nervous about that. She doesn't really want to because of all the disappearances that have been happening. Sounds dangerous. Hama says, hey, look, we're two master waterbenders under the protection of the full moon. With our power boost, what's going to be able to take us on? So, Katara does end up agreeing to go. So she takes Katara out for another lesson under the full moon, and she opens up to Katara and says, hey, look, I'm about to show you this thing that I used to escape from the prison. It can only be done in the full moon. And basically she goes over how she realized that any living thing is full of water and the blood inside of them can be manipulated, right? So she wants to teach Katara the technique of bloodbending, which lets you use a person's body like they're a puppet, and it lets you manipulate them physically into doing whatever you want. Back when Hama tried to escape, she used it to make the guard unlock her cell so that she could escape. Now, Katara hears all of this talk about taking a person's will away from them, using them like a puppet, bending the blood inside of her body, and she's like, I don't think I want to do this. Now, when Katara tells Hama this, they get into an argument. They're going back and forth. Hama says, look, this ability wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for the actions of the firebenders. They brought this on themselves. They created this bloodbending themselves. And every single person in the Fire Nation is culpable, and there are no innocents here. They are your enemies. Learn how to control their body, use your power, and enforce your will over them, basically. This is how Katara realizes, hold on, wait a minute. Disappearances at night, you're causing people to disappear under the full moon by bending their blood. Katara says that she's not going to learn blood bending no matter what, and she's also not going to let Hama keep terrorizing the people, and it ends up sparking a fight between the two of them. Now, this fight is one of the best in the whole entire series outright. I do have a video about how to make a good fight scene, so I'll send you a link to that. I'll pop it up in one of the corners. But it starts with Hama trying to bloodbend Katara, right? and it starts to work. Katara's body starts to move on its own, but then she resists it. She is Hama's a more experienced bender, and she's really good. She is a master, but Katara at this point, she is potentially the most powerful waterbender that is still alive, I would say. And her brute strength is just no match for what Hama is capable of. So she undoes the blood bending, and now she's able to move. She says, look, you can't beat me, I'm too strong. And they end up getting into a fight. Now they're both ripping the water out of actual plants and stuff. They're killing the forest around them. Trees are shattering, grass is dying. Katara's trying to pull more from her little water pouch and stuff and the air and whatnot, but she is pulling actual water from plants too and killing stuff as she has to. And they're just fighting back and forth. It is in Katara's favor because, like I said, Katara is a master just like Hama, but she does have more strength, and it does make up for her lower amount of experience. Then Aang and Sokka come to warn Katara about Hama. Basically, during all these lessons, they went into town, they were messing around trying to find out about these disappearances and help the people. They found the prison with Toph. Toph stayed back to unlock all the doors, and they ran over to warn Katara about Hama. So, they join in on the fight. They're like, hey, you're you're outmatched. You can't do anything here. And Hama's like, you guys are outnumbering yourself. Starts bloodbending the two of them and making them attack Katara, right? Katara sort of deflects them and freezes them to a tree, immobilizes them. And then she goes to fight Hama more, but Hama says, hey, you're not letting your friends hurt you, but you better make sure they don't hurt themselves either. And Hama shatters the ice and launches them at each other, and Sokka's got his sword pointed straight out to impale Aang. There's nothing that can be done about it. They are going to die, and then all of a sudden they just stop, and they're in control of their own bodies again. And what's happening is Katara is bloodbending Hama and forcing her will on Hama to make her stop bloodbending Aang and Sokka in order to save their lives. This is when the villagers get there with Toph, and everybody arrests Hama. She goes with zero resistance, right? And she's like, hey, my work is done here, right? She's laughing. She's like, I don't even care anymore. I've already won. And Katara's crying now. This was a big moral sort of boundary she didn't want to cross. And Hama's just ecstatic. She feels like she won. Hama, as I said, incredible villain, S-tier villain. And I would agree that she basically does win in the end. How would you make a character sheet for somebody like her if you want to make a really good villain? You're going to want to start with a character sheet so that you get a good base. So the first thing I like to start with is sort of their name and their role, and just a little bit of info about who they are. I've got something written down here. So Hama, she's a villain. She's an old lady who runs an inn deep in Fire Nation territory. She secretly kidnaps Fire Nation citizens at night and locks them away in a prison under the mountain. And now you move on to 2 or 3 very major points from their backstory. You don't want to waste time here. It's got to be very major events, and it is what sort of molded them and influences who they are and what they do in the modern day and how they've come to see the world. So for Hama, I got this written down. Hama grew up as a waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe. She trained hard to become the best waterbender she could. she's a member of the same village that Sokka and Katara come from. That is important. So we want to put that in her backstory. When she grew older, the Fire Nation started attacking the Southern Water Tribe. Hama defended the tribe with the other benders, but raids kept coming, and one by one, they all fell into captivity, basically, right? Hama was the last to be taken into custody, and in the end, their strength was too much. So we go on with the next point here. Hama spent decades in prison, kept deep in a compound, bound in chains when given water, and unable to move. She was given only the tiniest bit of water and food to survive. She could feel every full moon making her strong, and realized the rats in her cage were filled with water. So she spends years practicing bending their blood until one day she felt skilled enough to bend the blood of a guard. She forced him to open the cage and escaped. Now, depending on how you slice it, that may technically be 4 points instead of the 2 to 3 I said. It's not the kind of thing where you got to be a huge stickler. Just do what you got to do. It should be like a half a page, 2/3 of a page, 3/4 of a page, like 50%, 66%, or 75% of a page. Not a big deal. A major villain like this, you want to give as much of a background to, and you want to flesh them out as much as you do with your protagonists. So now we give a little bit of who they are today, right? So Hama spent the last decades running an inn, and she skulks at night to take people captive with her bloodbending. She is ruled by her anger and hatred. You can mention here that she plays at being like a sweet old lady by day, right? The most important part here, or at least one of them, this is all very important, so make sure you do it all as well as you can. But here we want to do what her want is and what her need is. The want is like a surface level thing. Maybe it's a bit more superficial. It's what they consciously desire. It should be fueled by their backstory and how they view the world because of their backstory. And it should be sort of what they think will give them satisfaction or fix stuff for them. The need is a deeper reflection of that want. It should be pretty related, or like as closely related as you can get it. And it should sort of inform what the want is and how they come to that conclusion at a conscious level. So Hama wants to make the people of the Fire Nation suffer the way she did for so many years. All of them are guilty by association. What Hama needs is to process and move past what happened to her so she can eventually find happiness. Those two things are related because she is processing what happened to her or avoiding it by doing what she is actively doing. Now for the end, you can give some sort of vice or struggle they deal with, a character flaw, or like a couple general facts about them. And after that part's done, you can sneak in a couple quotes just to, like, of who they are, like what they would say, just to make sure you have a feel for who they are and how they kind of act. I do want to show you, or mention to you though, when Hama meets Katara, it gives her a new want, a new purpose to life, and it sort of renews her vigor. She wants to pass on her ways to Katara and sort of find a successor. And that kind of supersedes her want to make people suffer the way that she has. And in a way, it actually is straight up related to it because she's hoping that Katara will take place in it, right? So what makes Hama a great villain? Well, basically, it's that she is incredibly strong, has a lot of agency, and she's very active in the story. She is making things happen and being what sort of fuels the things that are happening. She's actually incredibly unique too and stands out among all the other villains. She's so unique, as a matter of fact, that she even changes the tone of the episode she's in, right? This is a sort of like bright, happy story with serious moments. There's some campiness, some comedy, action, adventure, but the episode that she's in is predominantly like a thriller slash horror. And why is that? It's because of the nature of who she is and what she does. And it is so prominent and prevalent that it actually influences the tone of the episode that she's in. She's also a dark reflection of Katara. She is what Katara would become if she lets her hate and her anger control her, because Katara does harbor a lot of anger and resentment. Not to the extent that Hama does. She's not controlled by it, but it is there, and this is sort of a potential future. Hama is a warning, a commentary, and whether Katara wins or loses to her has huge personal stakes. And in the end, from a certain viewpoint, Hama does win, right? She forces Katara into a scenario where she has to use and learn bloodbending. She creates the next version of herself. And that's really what she was looking to do after meeting Katara. She has opened a door that can't be closed, right? It's sort of a binary thing, a 1 or a 0. And can bloodbend is now set to yes. You know, like that is something she's going to have to deal with for the rest of her life. And she has enforced that will over somebody, just like she was really, really not wanting to and really disgusted by. Hama straight up doesn't even care if she spends the rest of her life in prison. She's already spent so many decades in prison, and she's right at the end of her life. So for her, it's kind of a what does it matter type of thing. The main thing is Katara is put in a lose-lose situation and pushed in ways that she never has been before and brought to extremes. You'll notice another thing about her, right? As a character on a negative character arc, the closer she gets to her want, the further she gets from her need that we've established in our character sheet. She wins in the end. She gets what she wants, but it's the opposite of what she needs. She ends up going to prison again. She's going to spend the rest of her life in prison, and the vast majority of her backstory is about how she hated being in prison and never wants to be in there again. By the end of her arc, she's so sort of like twisted into something that she is not or shouldn't be that she doesn't even care about it anymore. If you think about it, it's just like the Joker in The Dark Knight, right? The Joker tells Batman, hey, all it takes is one bad day to make a person just like me. Even the most pure, shining white knight, they will fall to my level. And just one bad day is all it takes. He also tells Batman that he's a freak, and just like the Joker is, and that regardless of all the things that Batman does for the people, they will cast him aside and treat him like a leper. They will shun him, and all of these civilized folk will eat each other in the end. So Joker ends up succeeding, and he corrupts Harvey Dent. He turns him into Two-Face, and after that is finished, Batman ends up taking the blame for all that stuff that happened, and now the people shun him. It's exactly like the Joker said was going to happen. Batman sort of physically beats the Joker, but in the end, he does lose, and the Joker is proven right. And Batman's put in a much worse position than he was before. The Joker realistically wins, and he gets what he wants, but he's brought further from what he needs. And, in the end, the Joker is also way worse off than he was when he was free, just doing whatever he wanted. But, like I say, he gets what he wants. That is him achieving something. Negative arc brings him further away from what is good, though. You'll notice the Joker, just like Hama, is considered one of the best villains in history, right? And that's not a coincidence. They are similar in a lot of ways, but also completely unique, and they are individuals. Every facet of Hama is a masterclass in writing a villain, and there are so many lessons that you can learn over the course of just a 22-minute episode. If you take and apply some of these lessons in your own writing, you will for sure elevate it to the next level. That is everything I have for today, though. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it in the comments section down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.